Now, with the National Union of Students report into anti-Semitism there, what can you tell us what the findings were and what your interpretation of that is?
Well, I think to understand what's been going on, you should understand this is going on from those great goals that we were looking at. This is a game being played on a tilted playing field where they've changed the rules and they've chosen a referee from one of the teams. Right. There were complaints from the Union of Jewish Students that the National Union of Students was rife with anti-Semitism, not unconnected to the fact that the NUS members have voted very recently for a president who was a supporter of Palestine. They got rid of her, and now they're trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. So the we need to understand the Union of Jewish Students does not represent all Jewish students at universities. It represents a substantial number of them who are dedicated to supporting Israel. And the Union of Jewish Students receives funding from the Israeli embassy. And yeah, it's quite astonishing. So they're quite well provided for, and there's a career path that goes from UJS to jobs in the Israeli embassy itself, where they get trained up a bit, and then they come into the labor movement in many cases and become MPs. So it's quite a well worked out system. And UJS, the Union of Jewish Students, complained that there was rampant anti-Semitism in the NUS, and they made such a fuss, and they obviously had supporters internally, that they set up an inquiry. Now, an inquiry is not a bad thing, and anti-Semitism is a serious issue, and anti-Semitism exists among students as elsewhere, and there are some very foul things that are said and done with Hitler analogies, or Hitler didn't go far enough, that sort of thing. So we're absolutely in favor of those things being pursued. I should mention that although I'm in Jewish Voice for Labour, I'm also on the committee of the British Committee for the University of Palestine, and I'm more speaking in that capacity on this subject because we've been quite involved in this. So the Union of Jewish Students has a membership which is committed to Israel and all things Israeli, and defending against criticism of Israel. The Union of Jewish Students was central in spreading the very damaging IHRA definition across British universities. The other Williamson, Gavin Williamson, when he was in Minister of Education, picked up on the Union of Jewish Students pressure and said that all universities have to adopt that definition, with all the same sort of problems there that we had in the Labour Party. So they managed to get an inquiry, and the Union of Jewish Students was given a veto over who would carry out the inquiry. So that's what I mean by choosing a ref from one of the teams. So that this was a KC, Rebecca Tuck. Interestingly, on May the 23rd, the NUS announced her selection to lead the inquiry. On May the 23rd, she shared a Times article saying that students who supported Palestine were almost invariably anti-Semitic. And almost at once, she then closed down her social media account. So we don't know what she put in before that. So we have a Casey who all we know about her attitudes on Israel is that they align somewhat, maybe a great deal, with the Union of Jewish Students, who are trying to exclude debate about Israel-Palestine, and in particular, a debate about boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Is there anything you want to ask? I'd like to go on with that, but
no, please carry on. Yeah.
Okay, the recommendations of her report are not surprising if you can see that she was an investigator approved by UJS, the Union of Jewish Students. She says that Jewish students are made uncomfortable in NUS. By what? By people talking about Hitler? No, by people debating boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. And she urges restrictions on those debates. She says that because they can be toxic for Jewish students, therefore we have to appoint a neutral facilitator who will make sure that nobody says anything that could offend anybody else. That's one of our recommendations. Anti-Semitism training should be given to everyone involved in NUS by the Union of Jewish Students. Election candidates for the NUS should have their social media accounts going back historically for years to check whether they've said anything that could be deemed anti-Semitic, and if so, they would be excluded from the election, and so on. That speakers or performers should be who have anti-Semitic views should be excluded from taking part in NUS conferences. And this year they did cancel the performance by Loki, who's a well-known rapper who is very supportive of Palestine. So you can see where it's going, and all of this has come about through a KC producing a report which is utterly slanted one way.
Gosh, it's shocking. I mean, but it's in a way we've seen it in the Labour Party, so it's not as shocking, but it should be more. I don't know. It's depressing. So a
little bit of, can I just give you a thing? We submitted our evidence in writing, particularly focusing on how bad the IHRA definition was. We then went along and gave verbal evidence to Rebecca Casey, and I went along as chair of BRICUP, British Committee for the University of Palestine. And the guy who went along with me is Tony Lerman. Now, he's extremely erudite and knowledgeable about anti-Semitism, having served in various Jewish organizations. He's the author of this monumental book, which takes apart the IHRA definition. And we thought that she was listening. There are 5 lines quoted from Tony Lerman in her report. There's at least 5 pages of stuff from people who support Israel. And the 5 lines from Tony Lerman have been put in just so that we couldn't say that she hadn't listened, because the 5 lines have none of the arguments. They're just saying this debate has been going a long time. Well, we know that. So she quotes Tony Lerman on something that everybody's agreed on, but doesn't quote his demolition of the IHRA definition, which NUS is using in this whole business.